in the home, whatever way you are ending toward, it just goes. Whenever we're under stress, and you guys will probably find that too. Do you have things that you can tolerate when life is good and easy? And then you're like, when life gets stressful, that is too loud. Turn it down. You're driving me nuts. Well, you were fine with it yesterday. But today, when life is stressful, you can't handle it. Your sensory system usually goes the other way when you're under stress, whichever way you tend to lean. So think about that with our kiddos. Whatever they're going through will cause that to be amplified. Okay. So here's our little guys. Some of them are overreactive, some of them are under-respondent, and here's our just right sensory players. And there are usually things that we can do for kids to take them from here to here. And one thing I want to let you know, a lot of sensory kiddos are doing this on their own. They are trying strategies and they are doing things on their own that they've figured out help their sensory system go from either here or there to here. A lot of times those behaviors aren't behaviors that you want to have in your classroom. Sometimes those are things that those kiddos are getting in trouble for. But I'd love for you guys to just kind of think, is there any way we could let them continue to do this in a little bit different way? Or is there any way we could modify this instead of just saying, that's a maladaptive behavior for our classroom, it's got to go. Because what can happen a lot of times is when you take away their coping strategy, they'll find another one, and it's usually one that you're less happy with. So just know that. When you take away a pacifier of a little kiddo that is very orally seeking, if you take that away without giving them something else in its place, sometimes things get worse. Sometimes that's how we get biters. So, okay. This is our, can you guys look through there? I love this. Can you find the words that say focusing on someone speaking to me? For a lot of our kids that are over-responsive, this is their life. The ammonia of glass cleaner, the smell of recently microwaved salmon. Right there in the middle is focusing on someone speaking to me. There are over-responders. They are paying attention. They are acutely paying attention. They're just paying attention to the wrong things. Their sensory system can't filter out all that other stuff and get through to someone speaking to me and focusing on that because of all the other things that are going on. So if we understand this is the life of some kids, it really helps us deal with them. And I want to tell you guys, I know we say make fun of the kids with they have their tags cut out and all that thing. Part of it is tags can bother you, scratchy tags can bother you. You habituate. You let it go. It no longer is at the forefront of your mind. You go, that's scratchy, and then you let it go. A lot of our kids that are over-responders just cannot. And part of the reason I connect to these kiddos is this is me as a kiddo. And I still, if someone will come up behind me and just kind of lightly touch me and I didn't know it was coming, I know it is not socially acceptable to wheel around and elbow them. But that is still my first response. It triggers my fight, flight, or freeze and sets me on edge. And I can feel that light little tickle touch for about 10 minutes afterwards. So just realize a lot of our kids are in that situation where their sensory system is really different. It is different. And we need to understand the differences. Okay. Here's our brain. We've got our 3 parts of our brain. And down on the right-hand side, you've got your amygdala, our security guard. Little bitty part of the brain. Huge in kids that are over-responders. The part is not huge, but it's a huge player in what they're doing. So just understand our kiddos that are over-responders are basically in fear mode a large part of their life. So understanding. I deal a lot with kids from trauma. Our kiddos with sensory processing issues and our kiddos with autism have trauma that's coming from within. There's still kiddos from trauma, and we need to understand how fearful their life can be. Okay. Who's seen this? Yay! who's seen it before they came here? Who has seen it from, okay, yay. Okay, we're going to do it again if you've already seen it. This is flipping your lid. This is your brain. And down under here is your limbic system. And right down there is your amygdala. And a lot of times that downstairs brain just flips and takes over. And this is happening in a lot of our sensory kids. They're spending a lot of time with their downstairs brain in charge. Remember, when you've got your upstairs brain offline, you don't have language, you don't have self-control, even if you had it before you flipped your lid. You don't have problem solving, you don't have choice making. When you have flipped your lid, you did not make a choice. You didn't make good choices. You can tell children they didn't make good choices, but when they flipped their lid, they didn't make a choice. They just reacted. Their brain just reacted. Okay. This is a picture of the things that we want kids to know. We want, and right there in life skills, it was supposed to say learning and behavior. Learning and behavior are our outcome that we want. But if our house is built on a weak basement of the senses, if the sight, the smell, and all the muscle and the gravity sense and everything is coming in inaccurately, the house is going to be wiggly. We're going to have a lot of trouble with the listening, looking, reading, all of those second floor skills, all those brain skills, and ultimately with learning and behavior. So just remember, sometimes your problem isn't with the listening, looking, reading, all those brain skills. It's really with the information that's coming in with the senses. Okay. Talking about red flags. This is on SPD. Website. I can send you the link. It's really easy to find. Just some red flags to look for kiddos that might be having sensory issues as opposed to some other kind of issues. The bright lights, the hair washed or cut, the picky eating, the tags is huge, the hate being tickled or cuddled. Some of our kiddos are the opposite. They crave the tickling and the cuddling. And so just because you don't have these issues doesn't mean you don't have sensory issues. These are just some of the common red flags. Difficulty dressing themselves, sitting in a W position, just some things to kind of look for. I think it's almost better to think about risk factors. The risk factors for kids to have a greater chance of having sensory processing disorder or significant sensory issues. Some of the main ones are prematurity. Our kiddos that came early tend to have sensory issues a lot more common. This is interesting, especially those mid-range preemies. Not necessarily our itty-bitty early preemies, but our kind of in the middle preemies. Our 4 to 8 week early kiddos tend to actually have more sensory issues. Our kiddos with gastrointestinal issues tend to have more issues with sensory. Definitely our kiddos that had any type of trauma. And trauma can be medical intervention early on, something that was painful or kept them away from mom and that loving, nurturing attachment environment. Also, kiddos that are in foster care or adopted, almost all of them have some kind of sensory issues. That transition, whether it was smooth or chaotic, they had a large change in their environment, and a lot of them had some trauma even prenatally in their life, in their early life. So it's going to be a lot more common, and obviously children on the autism spectrum, not all of them have sensory processing disorder, but all of them have some significant sensory issues. I say all. Everyone I've ever met has some significant sensory issues. Yes?
With kids that are walking on their tiptoes, what's affecting that?
Several things. It can be a fight, flight, or freeze. It's an infant reflex, and it can be a fear mode. It can actually just be muscle tightness. I mean, it can be a lot of things. It can be some sensory defensiveness. It can be several different things.
Is it normal up to a certain age though? Like, is it typical to see that until up to a certain age?
Not really.
No.
I mean, it's always a little bit of a yellow flag, in my opinion, if they do.
So is it good to refer parents to a pediatrician to discuss that?
And some people aren't going to have, I mean, they're not going to see it as the yellow, almost red flag that it is, but yeah. And the not crawling thing too, that is definitely an orange flag. Yes?
Is sensory processing, is it a genetic thing as well?
There is a genetic link. We do see it run in families. I think there's going to probably come out more testing on that. They've done some testing through this SPD Foundation. They are finding that it's more common in lower socioeconomic homes, which I'm not sure why. It seems like that should be one thing where the playing field was level for those kiddos that start out in a low SES, but they're finding it's more common with them too. So,
Also,
sorry, I'll come back over here.
On your chart, did you split those up on purpose or those not? It doesn't matter which kid it's on.
I didn't do it. They've done a lot of research, and I think they just kind of
It's not really categorized. It's just
no, and I think they just kind of took the top red flags, and they have a 4-long sheet page that's a checklist, which that is probably if you have parents you're concerned about, I probably would just hand them the checklist, not even fill it out. Just say I found this. I'm giving it to a few parents. What do you think? So not even start. You might check your own, but that might be a good way to start. So was there a question over here?
Also, my daughter is on the spectrum and she's sensory processing. She's high, functioning and everything. But being 13 now, and hygiene is very important. She has a hard time watching like the shower hitting her head, and like she hated rain. So how do you get past that? Do you still have to see OTs and teens because they were like, you're kind of done with us, and now it's on to you.
Part of the thing is people say, do you outgrow? Can we talk later? I think I have some good individual ideas. Part of the thing is people ask, and this is a general question, do you outgrow sensory issues? Well, no, not really. But you get control. I get to decide whether I take a shower or a bath. I get to decide whether I sit at a desk all day and work. I get to decide what kind of clothes, and I usually get to decide what food I eat. I get the choice, and I get to meet my own needs and make things kind of level. Kids don't. So that's a lot of times you don't outgrow them, but you find your own coping strategies and learn to deal with them. So, okay, we've got to speed up. Here's another chart, and I could send you this one too. Just more red flags, a lot of the same. You might, if you were trying, I could send both to you. If you were trying to help a particular parent find an issue, you might choose which chart you wanted to use. Okay, now here's my try not to. What to do, what to do. And I'm going to grab my phone so I know what time it is. The first thing I'd like for you to try not to do is diagnose. Don't tell parents your kid has a sensory processing issue, because they may not. It may be a behavior that has kind of gotten wrapped up with some kind of sensory issues, and it may be something you're just seeing in your classroom. They may do great at home. So do not diagnose. Try not to compare. Try not to compare kids to other kids. You know the thing about if you've met one child on the autistic spectrum, you've met one autistic child. If you've met one child with sensory issues, you've met one child. So just remember they're all very, very individually. Try not to take it personally. I've got with me, and if I had a pocket, it would be in my pocket. But I've got with me some of the best tools for dealing with kids who have sensory issues in your classroom in my bag. The number one is your brain model, and really think about, are they flipping your lid or are they not? The second tool that is fabulous for working with kids, can you see it? It's a QTip. Remember QTip, QTIP. Quit taking it personally. They are not doing these things to drive you into the loony bin. Even though it seems that way sometimes. They're not doing it because they don't like you. Try not to take things personally, and try to have an attitude of it's me and them together and the family, and we're on a team against these issues. Try not to take it personally. The third tool, a pencil. you will do yourself a huge favor and really help solve a lot of behavioral problems, especially the sensory ones, if you will keep a log and take notes. And I've got one that's really good in the handouts. And so you can be really objective about it. And try not to flip your lid. Remember, I know you have sensory issues, and it always worries me. I work a lot with foster and adoptive parents. When you have a mismatch, a sensory mismatch, you can have a lot of problems. If you have a child that is a seeker and a parent that is an avoider of the same sense, a lot of times that can cause problems. And as a teacher with kids in your classroom, you're going to have kiddos that are a sensory mismatch. They're seeking whatever you're avoiding, or avoiding whatever you're seeking. So just try not to take it personally and not flip your lid and realize maybe we have a little sensory mismatch here, and I may need to change up things a little bit in order to kind of deal with that. Okay, ooze with empathy. Try to really understand where they're coming from and what kind of horrible, no good, very bad days they are having. And I know that their horrible, no good, very bad days translate into a horrible, no good, very bad day for you as their caregiver, as their parent, as the person who has to be in a room with them. I know. But try your best to ooze with empathy. I like to ask people this. What would be the very first step you have to do before you walk a mile in someone else's shoes? Very first step. What would it be? Take your shoes off. You guys are awesome. Preschool teachers are better at this question than some groups I ask. Take your shoes off. You need to take off your ideas of what feels good and what doesn't feel good and what you like and what you don't like and what's normal sensory responses to things, and understand where they're coming from. And I think that's part of really getting down and connecting with our kiddos is understanding. Just because I don't like to crash into furniture and don't mind strawberries doesn't mean that it is not their favorite thing in the world and feels fabulous, or, you know, so it doesn't mean just because my sensory preferences, it doesn't relate to anyone else's. So remember how individual they are. And that's really part of giving kids a voice and connecting with them. So, have a sensory-friendly classroom. I would say the best thing to do is to, at the start of the year, not have such an overwhelming classroom. And don't go back to your directors and say, I'm not supposed to put up anything up this year because I'm having a sensory-friendly classroom. Just try to kind of watch and see. When you walk in the room, if you were an avoider, would you go, whoa? Or would you be kind of able to ease in? One thing is to have some kind of visually quiet spots, things that are kind of soothing, a sensory-friendly classroom. And that means sensory-friendly to both sides of the spectrum, to those guys that are seekers and they need more, because if they go into a dull vanilla classroom, what's their sensory system going to say? It's going to say more, and they're going to find that more. These little guys are very adept. If you don't give them enough sensory input, they will find it. So you need a sensory-friendly classroom. Have a classroom sensory diet, and I don't mean diet that you eat. I mean that you have regular input in tactile, in visual, in all of the senses, in movement. Movement is awesome because it can give you so many different sensory input. Use a lot of organizing movements. Organizing movements are awesome for both ends of the spectrum, both ends of kiddos that are seekers and avoiders. And kids need lots of just free play and free movement, but also organizing movements. And I'm primarily talking about things that are weight-bearing or things that are cross midline. So weight-bearing would be the best one. The easiest one is crawling, playing puppies and kitties, moving through the classroom on your hands and knees or your hands and feet, like the bear crawl. That is a fabulous, easy one for our age group. I wish they could do it in elementary, and it would be developmentally appropriate it should be. To move around on all fours is fabulous. In any type of cross midlines. So has anybody done anything like the brain gym class where you learned about your midlines? Wait, yay! Try if anybody in your group went and the rest of the group didn't, share some of those. Especially the link up and the thinking cap and the owl. And if you guys want to stay after, I can show you those, or you can find the brain gym teacher and see if she'll show you a couple in between her sessions. It's fabulous for our kiddos that are on both ends of the spectrum. So when I talk about cross midline, I mainly mean the mid cross line. That's exact. I always mean if I say cross midline. So we're talking about things that take your hands left to right, things where you're crossing. A fabulous way to walk down the hall when you're really, everybody's disorganized is crisscross walking. And if they can't do it, they're trying. And the reason that works is the upstairs brain, the impulses, and it's going back and forth, and it's not giving energy, electrical juice down to the downstairs brain to take over. So you have to use the upstairs brain and use it a lot. So I love this quote. Too often we forget that discipline really means to teach, not to punish. A disciple